Every single human civilization ever discovered, separated by oceans, centuries, and thousands of miles, independently found a way to get high. That is not a coincidence. That is biology. This is the story of how humans discovered mind-altering substances. Not the watered-down version where some clever ancient person figured out fermentation and invented beer. The real story. The deep story. The one that goes back not thousands of years but millions, and involves animals, evolutionary biology, accidental poisonings, ritual deaths, and the single most universal behavior in all of human history across every culture that has ever existed on this planet. Because here is what most people get fundamentally wrong about this topic. They treat the discovery of mind-altering substances as though it was a human invention, something our ancestors sat down and worked out. But that is not what happened at all. The desire to alter your own consciousness did not begin with humans. It did not begin with primates. It goes back so far into evolutionary history that arguing it is purely a human trait misses almost the entire story. Let us start with the animals, because you need to understand this part before anything else makes sense. In the forests of Siberia, reindeer have been observed doing something that should completely ruin your idea of the natural world as a place of clean, sober, survival-focused creatures. They dig through snow to locate a specific mushroom called Amanita muscaria, the red and white spotted one from every fairy tale you have ever seen. It is mildly toxic and strongly psychoactive. The reindeer eat it, stagger around, behave in ways that look unmistakably like intoxication, and then come back for more. This is not a mistake. This is not desperation. This is a preference. These animals are choosing this experience on purpose. In Tasmania, wallabies have been documented breaking into commercial opium poppy farms, eating the plants, and then moving in slow drugged circles through the crops before collapsing. In North America, waxwing birds gorge on fermented winter berries until they literally cannot fly straight and tumble out of the air. Bighorn sheep in certain mountain ranges will climb genuinely dangerous rock faces purely to scrape a particular lichen off stone with their teeth, a lichen that has narcotic properties. Elephants have long been associated with deliberately seeking out fermented fruit. Notice the pattern. Different continents, different species, different substances, same behavior. Over and over and over again, across animals with no shared ancestors for hundreds of millions of years, the drive to seek out altered states keeps appearing. In the 1980s, a researcher at UCLA named Ronald Siegel spent years documenting this phenomenon across species and arrived at a conclusion that was genuinely radical at the time. He proposed that the pursuit of intoxication functions as a fourth fundamental biological drive, sitting right alongside hunger, thirst, and reproduction. Not a cultural habit, not a human weakness. A deep biological motivation wired into the nervous systems of a huge range of creatures. And once you sit with that idea for a moment, the entire history of human drug use suddenly looks completely different. Our ancestors did not stumble onto this desire. They inherited it. The craving was already there. All they had to do was find something that satisfied it. So what was the first mind-altering substance humans ever encountered? The answer is almost certainly alcohol. Not brewed alcohol. Not invented alcohol. Just the natural kind. And the story of how it entered our biology is one of the most fascinating things in all of evolutionary science. When fruit ripens and drops from a tree, the sugars inside begin to ferment. Wild yeast in the air lands on the fruit and converts those sugars into ethanol. The same molecule found in every glass of wine, every bottle of beer, every spirit on any shelf anywhere. The forest produces it constantly and for free. Our primate ancestors, who ate enormous quantities of fruit over millions of years, would have been encountering fermented fruit regularly. The mildly alcoholic kind that delivered a faint, pleasant warmth and a slight softening of the world's hard edges. And here is where it gets extraordinary. In 2015, a research team led by a biologist named Matthew Kerrigan published a study examining an ancient enzyme in the human liver called ADH4, which is one of the primary tools the body uses to metabolize alcohol. Kerrigan traced the history of this enzyme through millions of years of primate evolution and found something remarkable. Approximately 10 million years ago, a single mutation in this enzyme made it about 40 times more efficient at processing ethanol. 40 times. Nearly overnight in evolutionary terms. Right around the period when our ancestors were transitioning to spending more time on the ground, where the fermenting fallen fruit collects. Evolution does not upgrade things for no reason. The body tuned itself to handle alcohol, because those who could process it better found more food, extracted more calories, and survived more effectively. A biologist named Robert Dudley built on this, proposing what he calls the drunken monkey hypothesis. The scent of fermenting fruit signals ripe, calorie-dense food nearby. Animals attracted to that smell ate better. We may have evolved a pull toward the scent of alcohol not because intoxication itself was the goal, but because for millions of years, that smell reliably meant a meal was close. The buzz was just the bonus. So by the time anything resembling a human showed up, we already had a body designed to process alcohol and an evolutionary history of seeking out things that smelled like fermentation. The first time someone deliberately brewed something is almost a footnote to that deep prehistory. The oldest confirmed evidence of intentional brewing comes from a site called Jiahu in China, where chemical residue in ancient pottery points to a fermented drink made from rice, honey, and fruit, dating back roughly 9,000 years. By that point, humans were not discovering alcohol. They were just organizing what they had already known for an incomprehensibly long time. But alcohol is the straightforward case. It comes to you. Your body is built for it. Fermentation happens without any human involvement whatsoever. The genuinely hard question is how our ancestors ever figured out all the other ones. Because here is the brutal reality of psychoactive plant discovery. Most of the world's plant compounds are either neutral, actively poisonous, or require very specific preparation to become useful. A mushroom that produces extraordinary visions at one dose kills you at twice that amount. A plant that relieves pain in a tiny serving stops your heart in a larger one. There are no labels. There are no instructions. There are no second chances if you guess wrong. So how did anyone ever work out which plants did something valuable and which ones just ended the experiment permanently? The answer is the one that nobody finds satisfying, but everyone knows is true. They found out by dying. For tens of thousands of years, the discovery of psychoactive plants was a process of lethal trial and error, conducted across generations of people who had no choice but to eat unfamiliar plants and then observe what happened next. Every traditional pharmacopoeia in human history sits on top of an invisible mountain of unnamed people who consumed the wrong thing at the wrong dose and did not survive to report the results. But humans had one capability that no other animal possessed to anything close to the same degree: memory transmitted through language. When someone survived a bad encounter with a plant, or watched someone else die from one, that information could be encoded into speech and passed forward in time. A sentence as simple as, "Avoid the white-spotted berries by the creek in spring," became a piece of community technology that saved lives for generations. The deaths were not wasted. They were converted into inherited knowledge. And crucially, our ancestors had teachers. They watched animals. Indigenous traditions across the world independently describe the practice of observing which plants animals sought out and using that as a guide. In the Amazon basin, there are accounts of communities noticing which specific plants jaguars consumed. In multiple traditions across Eurasia, the behavior of reindeer and other animals around certain fungi guided human experimentation. The animals ran the experiments first. The people recorded the outcomes. Consider what this produced over time. Near the Pecos River in Texas, archaeologists recovered dried peyote cactus buttons that were radiocarbon dated to approximately 5,700 years old. Almost 6,000 years ago, someone in that landscape had already identified one specific, visually unremarkable cactus among hundreds of similar-looking desert plants as the particular one containing a useful psychoactive compound. That is not a lucky guess. That is accumulated knowledge earned over an enormous span of time at genuinely terrible cost. In a cave in southern Spain, Neolithic people left behind bags packed with opium poppy capsules dating back over 6,000 years. In ancient Central Asian burial sites, researchers found evidence of cannabis with unusually high psychoactive content being used in ritual ceremonies around 500 BC. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote detailed accounts of Scythian nomads on the Eurasian steppe heating stones, throwing hemp onto them inside small enclosed tents, and inhaling the smoke together, a description historians dismissed for centuries until archaeologists excavated Scythian burial mounds and found the exact physical evidence Herodotus described. He was not exaggerating. He was, if anything, underselling what he witnessed. Here is something important that almost never comes up in these conversations. For most of human history, there was no clean separation between a drug, a medicine, and a religious experience. Those are modern categories that our ancestors would not have recognized. To the communities using these substances, a plant that changed how your body felt and how your mind worked was simply a plant with power. The same compound that sent you into visions at one dose might reduce fever at another and kill you at a third. Mastering a powerful plant meant understanding all three of those thresholds simultaneously. This is why the people who held this knowledge were treated with such profound respect and sometimes fear. The earliest healers, shamans, medicine people across cultures, were not primarily spiritual figures in the way modern people imagine. They were the repositories of extraordinarily precise and hard-won pharmaceutical knowledge. They knew which plants did what and in what quantities, under what conditions. That knowledge was the most valuable intellectual property any community possessed, and it was protected accordingly, passed down within specific lineages, encoded in ritual language that outsiders could not easily decode. The ritual dimension of ancient drug use is not something separate from its practical function. The ritual was the instruction manual. When a ceremony specified that a particular substance should only be consumed at a certain time of year, by people who had fasted for several days, in a particular physical location, with specific sounds and smells present, those were not arbitrary, mystical requirements. They were the accumulated safety protocols of a tradition that had learned through painful experience exactly what conditions produced useful effects and what conditions produced disasters. Now think about how this connects back to the biological drive we started with. The same deep evolutionary pressure that built alcohol tolerance into our ancestors 10 million years ago, the same cross-species pursuit of altered states documented by Siegel in the 1980s, meets the human-specific capacity for language and cumulative cultural memory. And what you get is something no other animal has ever achieved. Not just the experience of altered consciousness, but the deliberate, systematic, multi-generational refinement of how to produce it reliably, safely, and meaningfully. Different communities on completely separate continents, with no contact with each other whatsoever, all followed the same four-step process. Notice that an animal seeks out a particular substance. Observe the effect on the animal. Test a small amount yourself. Survive or do not. And if you do, tell someone what you found. That pattern played out independently thousands of times across every inhabited landmass. Nobody coordinated it. Nobody invented it. The same curious, pattern-recognizing, storytelling brain met the same biological drive and produced the same fundamental discovery on every continent where humans lived. And if you think any of this is safely ancient history, completely disconnected from your life in 2026. Do this experiment. Walk into your kitchen tomorrow morning and think about what you reach for first. Because the single most widely consumed psychoactive substance on the planet right now is not alcohol. It is not cannabis. It is caffeine, a compound that coffee and tea plants produce as a natural pesticide, literally a chemical designed to kill or paralyze insects chewing on their leaves. At some point in history, someone noticed an animal, or perhaps another person consuming those leaves or beans, observed that something interesting happened, and made a decision to try it themselves. The exact same ancient four-step process. And now we have built entire global economic systems and social rituals around consuming it every morning before we consider ourselves ready to interact with other human beings. The discovery of mind-altering substances was never a single moment. It was never one inspired ancestor who unlocked some profound secret. It was the slowest, most dangerous, most distributed research project in the history of life on this planet. The laboratory was the entire natural world. The funding was paid in human lives. The results were stored not in any archive, but in the lived memory of communities who understood that certain plants held power, and that respecting that power was the difference between healing and death. Every coffee shop you walk into, every glass of wine at dinner, every ancient cave painting that might depict a psychedelic experience, and there are several candidates in rock art from multiple continents. Every traditional ceremony built around a plant whose effects have been refined across hundreds of generations. Every single one of those things connects back to that same deep thread. An animal nervous system that learned to crave alteration, a human brain that learned to remember and transmit, and a planet that was already running the chemistry for free, waiting for something smart enough to notice. You did not choose to inherit that drive any more than your ancestors did. It was built into the wiring long before your family line existed. What makes us different from every other animal caught in the same ancient loop is that we became capable of understanding it, questioning it, and deciding consciously what to do with it. That is the real discovery. Not any particular plant, not any specific compound, but the realization, arriving slowly over hundreds of thousands of years of painful accumulated experience, that the human mind is something you can reach into and change, and that the knowledge of how to do that is worth passing all the way down the line to whoever comes next, which, as it turns out, is you. So if you found this as mind-bending as I did putting it together, drop a comment below and tell me which part surprised you most. And if you want to keep going down this particular rabbit hole, the next video is going to take you even deeper. Stick around. You are not going to want to miss it.